All right, good morning. It's Drodio. It's a Saturday. I like to do a vibe coding project on weekends. This is maybe something that is, my team might not get to it. I was a web developer 20 years ago, and I loved it. And then I've just been a CEO for multiple decades, and I got far away from coding. But now with AI, I'm able to get back into the code, and it is just it's a joyous thing for me. I'm a builder. I love building, and this is unlocked, especially with Storytell in conjunction with Cursor, which is what I use to vibe code. It's unlocked capabilities for me that make me feel incredible and help me build Storytell in a way that I haven't been able to build a company in the last 20 years. And so I'm going to walk you through my process, right? How does an ex-web developer from 20 years ago push production code using a combination of Storytell and Cursor? And so first, let me tell you about the thing that I want to get out into the world today. So we have recently launched this thing that we call the Prompt Launchpad, and it's pretty incredible. It is a series of prompts that you can use with one click. So if anybody remembers Mad Libs from back in the day, it's like having Mad Libs type prompts. Let me show you how one of these works. We'll go over here to have the most effective meeting of your life. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on this prompt, and we can see that what pops up is a prompt that has a series of boxes. And so I might say, I am Drodio at Storytell, and maybe I'm meeting with Elon Musk at SpaceX. And so we can see that Storytell is filling in all the places where these values exist. And I could just define, what the goal of the meeting is. Let's say that Elon wants to make better use of all his unstructured data, and he's interested in Storytell. And so all you have to do is you hit send. And then really the power of this is in the Storytell system, the multi-fleet agent system. Storytell will spin up a bunch of agents and go out and figure out what are the priorities of the person you're meeting with, what is that you can bring, what are your shared interests, and then how do you figure out how to have the most effective meeting of your life. We can see that Storytell is going out and it is finding the priorities of the person that you're meeting with, for example, doing a bunch of web searches. We can see that Storytell is starting to build out all of what it's finding, right? So it's learning about Elon, it's learning about Drodio, it's learning about Storytell capabilities, it's figuring out what the challenges are that Elon has across all his companies. And so it's giving me, a ton of, very deep analysis here. And now it's going to bring it all together. And looks like maybe my camera stopped working, but hopefully you can see my screen. So, here we go. It gave me a very in-depth dossier on the way that I can work with Elon, with a lot of details on angles to take to talk to Elon. Like, this is a great example here, this key talking point. Your companies have the same problems, but don't share any of their unstructured knowledge. So this is the kind of thing that I want to create dedicated static landing pages for, so that other people can discover these prompts. And so I am going to be coding up, effectively creating a static page that describes this prompt, and then we are able to deploy that in a way that it's crawlable and indexable by search engines and by AEO, GEO. We all know SEO, so there's kind of new agentic versions of searching that matter for a startup like us to be discovered by others. I started with a conversation with our engineer, Andy, and so this is the transcript from that call. And this was Andy describing the way that he wanted us to code this up. So this is a transcript file that I then referenced in this prompt. And I said, go give me a step-by-step guide on how to do this based on this transcript. So I started with Storytell in our engineering project. This is our engineering project, saying, hey, Storytell, give me a way to do this based on the directions that I've gotten from Andy. And so what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to take Storytell's output and I'm going to add it to project knowledge. So I'm going to start to build knowledge in the project based on what these different pieces that I'm pulling together. So one is the recommendations from Andy that I turned from this transcript into this document. And now I can see the document here, so I've added it into the project, and I'm going to label this. I'm going to label this asset as project creating static landing pages. And so I can give my project a little label here. And so now I've got a piece of knowledge labeled as this project. So that's the first thing. I also asked more questions about how exactly Andy would be doing his part, because I'd like to try to help him by doing the part that he said he was going to do. He was going to do some of the wiring up. And so we can see that Storytell also gave me the approach that it thought that Andy would want to use. And so I'm going to take this, and I'm also going to add this to the project as well. So now we have some specific implementation here that we're also adding into the project. And I'm going to view this, and I'm also going to label this in the same way. So project, now I've got this existing label here, so I just click it, and now I've added that label as well. So now if I click on this label here, I can see that I now have two documents, which is two pieces of output from Storytell labeled with this project label. The next thing that I want to do is I want to have Storytell tell me what the most recent best practices are, not only for SEO, but for AEO and GEO. So this is leveraging Storytell's ability to go out and search the web. And so we can see here that Storytell is starting to do that. And I'm going to use this to help me define my PRD. What's great is because I'm doing this in my project, which already has a lot about the way that Storytell is built, we can see that Storytell is defining instructions specifically for the tech stack that we have, which is so phenomenal. And now I'm getting some answers back about the approach that I need to take. With a lot of detail on how it needs to look. Telling me what the schema needs to look like, summary implementation points. So now I'm also going to add this into project knowledge. And you guessed it, I'm going to label this as well with that same label, because I'm going to be working with that label in a minute to make the PRD. I'll also share Storytell's output in my blog post, because this is, I think, valuable for anybody that wants to do this. So let me go ahead and add this label, and we'll just type the word project, and now we've got it labeled as well with that label. Okay, the next thing is that I posted in Slack talking to my engineering team about the fact that I wanted to do this work. And so one of my engineers' wives is an SEO expert and had some advice about how we should be doing SEO. And I want to take this and I want to add it into the Storytell project as well. To do that, I'm going into my assets section or files of Storytell, and I'm just saying paste content. And I'm literally just going to paste in the advice that she had. We'll call this SEO advice. And now I'm also going to, you guessed it, label this as well as the project label. And so now I've got 5 assets that are a part of this label here. I've got my multilingual URL SEO advice. I've got the items generated by Storytell. And then I've got the conversation that I had with Andy, the actual transcript of the conversation, all in this label called Creating Static Landing Pages. Now I'm ready to have Storytell define a PRD for me to send to my AI agents to code. So I'm going to say chat right here, and I'm going to chat with this label. And I can move this around, and I can make the chat bigger, and now I'm going to define my chat. By the way, if I want to see what I'm chatting with, I can just hit this chatting with one sources button here, and it will pull up you are chatting with, and it tells me that I'm chatting with this label here. So I'm able to quickly and easily see what the scope of the chat is. I can also turn public data on or off. And so if I don't want to use public data in the chat, I can turn it off. But I pretty much leave this on. If you're working with really sensitive data, you want to make sure there's no kind of leakage to public data sources, go ahead and turn this off. Otherwise, what I find is that Storytell is very good about working with the data that you are chatting with while allowing for enhancements to come from public data. And so what I'm going to do, because in this project, I've got more valuable data than just what's in this label, right? If you remember, in this label, we put these specific assets here that we wanted to work with. But if I go to the project assets, there's a lot more in here that could be valuable. For example, all the engineering linear tickets with activity in the past week. That gives Storytell a lot of context on what's going on. And so what I'm going to do in my chat here is expand it to use all of the data in the project. You can see that now I'm saying that I'm chatting with 33 sources. This is all the data in the project, and I'm just going to focus Storytell in to the PRD like this. Use the information in, and I'll say at. And when I hit the at sign, it pops up this picker. And now I can choose some specific things, and I'm just going to keep typing here. So let me do it again. I'll say at project, and I start typing. And it starts to constrain all of the available assets, labels, concepts, etc. And I can find this label that I'm looking for. And so I'm going to say, use the information in this project. So we can see now that I'm saying that I'm chatting with this label, but I'm also chatting with all the other knowledge in the project. And so I'm saying, create a PRD for me, use the information in the label here to define the PRD, and use everything else in the project knowledge as background. Okay, now Storytell is off, so it's figuring everything out. And if we want to, we can actually click into this preparing answer section, and we can see all the things that Storytell is doing. So it's doing some reasoning. We can click into each of these reasoning items, and we can look at them. We can click into the knowledge search that it's doing. We can see the way that it is searching knowledge and the actual knowledge that it is finding as it pulls everything together. So if you want to be able to kind of see, the sausage getting made, you can open this up. If you don't, you can just close it. A little pro tip here, this will show you the number of times that it reasoned, the number of times that it pulled knowledge. It kind of gives you a little bit of a cheat sheet there. And so now it is creating our PRD. And I'm just going to look through this. It looks great. Yeah, phenomenal response here from Storytell. And so what I'm going to do is, when it's done, I'm going to download this, and I'm going to start to use it in Cursor, and I'll show you a bit of that process as well. I'll let this finish first. At Storytell, we use linear to be able to kind of like track our work. And so the first thing I'm going to do is make a linear ticket for this work, and I'm going to grab the PRD right from Storytell, and we can see that I can copy it. When I do that, I have an opportunity to copy as Markdown, but I don't need to do that here. And so I've copied this, and now I'm going to just paste it into the linear ticket so that I have a definition here of the work that's being done. And so here is Storytell's output right in the ticket, and I'm going to assign the work to myself. Okay, now I've got it here. I've got all the details here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the name of the branch that I'm going to use. And now I'm in Cursor. And so I've got some pre-formatted prompts that I use in Cursor to kind of tie Cursor to Storytell. And so let me give you an example of one of those is. I use Text Expander to use a shortcut key that pops open a prompt, and I'm going to paste in the name of my branch here. And then just expand this prompt into Cursor. And I'm going to send. So I am in our repo. And so this is where it gets a little bit technical. If you're not a developer or haven't been one, it's going to be a little bit harder to follow, but I'll just describe it generally. So this is Cursor running our code base, which I've pulled down locally to my machine, and I'm running Storytell on a local host, which means that I'm running it on our machine. What that means is I'm running a version of Storytell right on my laptop as local host. Now that takes a little bit of work to set up, so it's not something you uh, can quickly do yourself, but it's not terrible either, especially if you are a CEO or an executive that has an engineering team to support you. By the way, engineering teams think it's just the most incredible thing ever when an executive is actually building and not just sitting in meetings all day. So I highly recommend figuring out how to become a builder. I call it vibe CEOing, where you're involved in aspects of the business that you would otherwise just be very distanced from. It just really helps motivate a team when the CEO or an executive is in it with them. Okay, so I'm running localhost, and I'll just provide one other little note here. This text expander prompt that I wrote, and by the way, if you'd like this, I'm happy to share some of my prompts with you. It also tells the AI how to work. And so this is very helpful for me to not be causing collisions with the engineering team. So I'm basically giving it instructions on how I want it to work. And so now I've got another predefined prompt. So I'm going to go right over here, and I'm going to say :PRD, which is my shortcut. And when I do that, I get this. And it gives me the ability to pop the Storytell PRD as Markdown into this prompt. And this is my instructions to the cursor AI, telling it what I want to do with the PRD. So let me grab it as Markdown. I'm going to go right back here, and I'm going to say copy, and then copy as Markdown. So now I've copied this document as Markdown. And I'll just go back here and I'll do it again. So :PRD. And then I'm going to paste the Markdown in. So now I've got this entire PRD here as Markdown, and I'm just going to say expand, which expands the prompt into the box here. And now I'm ready to send this. Cursor has a planning option here, so I'm going to choose plan. And that is it. So we can see now that Cursor is taking over from this point to actually write code, and it's using the requirements that I created. Now, it's not quite going off and drinking a Mai Tai. There's a lot more to do in terms of managing the agents that are going to be spun up by Cursor, but this is just a beautiful example of using Storytell to really be able to take a lot of unstructured data. In this chat, we're working with this label here, and this label has these 5 assets, which are all very unstructured data. The conversation that I had with Andy, or the recommendations from the wife of my engineer, or the output from Storytell that was generated by the searching that we did on the open web about best practices. So, the reason that I'm building Storytell, and the reason it feels incredible to me as a user, is because I am able to take things that otherwise would just result in conversations. I have a meeting with an engineer, and then I go off and have another meeting. Well, instead, I'm able to start to actually produce output from these things. And we can see that the AI is now planning how to get it done. It's asking for clarification. It's drawing the architecture. It's creating an implementation plan. I mean, these things are just incredible opportunities to have as an executive, to actually be a builder and a creator alongside my team. So hopefully that's helpful and valuable. Sorry my video stopped working, but hopefully you still were able to see the important stuff, which is how you could do this as well if you are interested. All right.